They didn't just test her patience, they targeted her, right in front of 20 other recruits. A staff sergeant drove his knee into her ribs, the same ribs she'd had rebuilt after Helmand Province. He whispered, "Let's see if the Navy's duct tape holds up this time." She didn't file a report, didn't ask for backup, didn't even raise her voice. She waited. And when the moment came, when the lights went out and the comms went live, she gave them the only lesson they'd never forget. Now, before we show you what happens when silence becomes strategy, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Subscribe with the bell icon turned on, and get ready. Because this isn't about revenge, it's about control. And what happens when the wrong person mistakes your calm for weakness? The Helmand heat didn't just press down, it radiated, shimmered off the sand like the whole desert was trying to breathe in reverse. The compound walls were mud brown, cracked, ancient. Lieutenant Wren Calloway moved through the doorway with her rifle up, barrel tracking left to right. Behind her, 3 SEALs stacked tight. Boots silent on dust, breathing controlled. The kind of silence that comes before violence. They've been hunting a Taliban cell commander for 6 days. Intel said he was here. 3rd building, 2nd floor. The stairs were narrow, wooden, rotted in places. Wren took point because she always took point. Not because she had to prove anything, because she was the best shot in the team, and everyone knew it. 52 confirmed kills in 3 years. They called her Reaper. Not because she was cruel, because she was inevitable. The 2nd floor smelled like gunpowder and old blood. 2 rooms, door on the left, door on the right. Wren signaled left. Her medic, a kid from Ohio named Jenkins, moved toward the right door. Young, 23, first deployment. Good hands, steady under fire, but still learning that hesitation in combat gets you killed. Wren cleared her room. Empty. Just prayer rugs and shell casings. She turned back toward the hallway just as Jenkins reached for the right side door handle. Something in her gut screamed wrong. The way the door sat in the frame, the faint scent of fertilizer, the wire running under the threshold. She didn't think. Thinking takes time. She moved, crossed the hallway in 2 strides, shoulder-checked Jenkins hard enough to throw him backward into the wall. He hit with a grunt, eyes wide, not understanding. Not yet. Wren's boot was still in the air, mid-step, when the door exploded. The blast was white light and pressure, a wave of force that picked her up and slammed her into the stairwell. The world tilted. Sound disappeared, replaced by a high-pitched ringing that felt like it was coming from inside her skull. She hit the stairs on her left side, felt the impact run through her ribs like a hammer striking a xylophone. 5 ribs. That's what the doctors would say later. 5 ribs fractured on impact. 2 of them shattered completely, fragments driven into the muscle tissue around her lung. She tried to breathe, couldn't. Her chest wouldn't expand. Panic crawled up her throat, cold and metallic. She forced it down. Panic was a choice. Pain was just data. Her training kicked in before her conscious mind caught up. Assess, adapt, act. She rolled onto her back, felt the grinding sensation of bone fragments shifting. Her left lung had collapsed. She knew it from the way her breath came in short, useless gasps, from the taste of copper in her mouth. Jenkins was screaming her name. The rest of the team was shouting into radios, calling for medevac, securing the building. Wren reached for her comm, fingers slippery with blood. Her blood. She keyed the mic. Reaper to actual. Building secure. 1 tango down. IED detonation. Need immediate dust-off. Coordinates follow. Her voice didn't shake. Didn't waver. She gave the grid coordinates from memory, each number clear and precise, while her vision started to tunnel at the edges. Jenkins was above her now, hands moving fast, cutting away her plate carrier, exposing the damage. His face went pale. Jesus Christ, Lieutenant, your ribs. I know, she said. Her voice sounded far away. Sucking chest wound. Seal it. He did, hands shaking but competent. He packed the wound, applied the seal, started an IV line, all while Ren stayed conscious through sheer will. Because passing out was a choice too. And she'd made a decision a long time ago that pain didn't get to make choices for her. She did. The medevac took 11 hours. 11 hours of holding pressure on her own chest wound. 11 hours of directing her team's exfil over the radio, even as her lung tried to fill with blood. 11 hours of proving that the body could scream all it wanted. Command came from the mind. The surgeons at Bagram said most men would have passed out from the pain. She didn't even scream. They rebuilt her ribs with titanium plates, 5 of them, screwed directly into the bone, told her she'd never deploy again, told her the plates might shift, might puncture her lung if she took another hit in the same spot, told her to take the medical retirement, the disability check, the quiet life. She told them to clear her for duty. That was 2018, Afghanistan, a lifetime ago and yesterday all at once. Now it was 2024, Camp Stryker, California, Mojave Desert. The heat was different here, drier, meaner. The kind of heat that didn't just make you sweat, it made you wonder why humans ever thought living in a desert was a good idea. 111 degrees Fahrenheit by 10 a.m. The sand reflected light like hammered brass. Everything smelled hotter in the afternoon. Brass, bullets, sweat dried over fabric, rank embedded in dust. Lieutenant Commander Ren Calloway stood just off the circuit perimeter with a stopwatch in one hand and a clipboard in the other. 29 years old, fatigues pressed sharp, sleeves rolled exactly 1 thumb width below the elbow. Her left side was taped tight beneath the uniform, not visible, but constant. A reminder she carried in her breath, not her posture. She didn't limp, didn't favor it, just stood still, spine straight, watching the movement drill unfold like it was a breathing map she'd drawn herself. Across the field, 5 mixed branch candidates carried combat dummies on stretchers, then swapped to ammo can drags. The wind cut through with fine grit. Whistles from the training towers echoed sharp every 40 seconds. Dust hung in the air like static. On the far side of the course, Staff Sergeant Kane Briggs stomped across the dirt like he owned it. Broad-shouldered, regulation beard shadow, that confident tilt to his jaw, the kind that always meant someone thought they could lead better than the rank standing in front of them. Behind him trailed Corporal Flynn Decker, stocky, all arms and no awareness, and Private First Class Wyatt Hale, 21 and already cocky, swinging his rifle prop like it was a toy he'd earned too early. They weren't hiding their contempt. They barely even tried. "Must be nice," Briggs muttered, loud enough for half the row to hear. "Getting to bark orders after a year of recovery leave. Can't imagine what the enemy smells like after hiding behind a desk that long." Decker chuckled. Hale followed suit, half a second too late, like he was learning the rhythm of cruelty from a master. Ren said nothing, just marked her clipboard. Deliberate, even strokes, the kind that don't ask for permission to be calm. Briggs didn't stop, never did. "Heard they screwed your ribs back together with plates. What did they use? Recycled canteen metal?" That one earned him a half snort from Decker. From her post near the comm station, Specialist Harper Novak looked up. 23, sharp eyes, good instincts. She caught the tail end of the sentence. Her eyes shifted between them, then to Ren, waiting for a reaction. There wasn't one. 6 years at Stryker. Seen plenty of instructors come through. Seen the ones who lasted and the ones who didn't. And he'd never seen anyone absorb disrespect the way Ren did. Not with weakness, with calculation. He made a mental note to stay on the right side of whatever was about to happen. Ren just clicked the stopwatch. Next pair, dragon shoulder switch, down and back. Time starts now. The corporals moved, half committed. Briggs took longer than necessary to get to the dummy, his boots trailing dirt like punctuation marks. Hale muttered as he passed Novak. Didn't know SEALs came in broken-in models. Novak said nothing, but her expression changed. Just enough. On the next lap, Ren moved closer to observe grip transitions. Still no comment, no emotion. Just the pen, the stopwatch, and the silence of someone measuring something deeper than speed or form. The kind of silence that makes people nervous without knowing why. Briggs saw it, smirked like he was winning. The desert kept breathing. The brass kept sweating in the sun. But tension. That was Ren's specialty. She didn't shout, she didn't correct. She just kept her thumb hovering over the stopwatch and her eyes fixed. Not on mistakes, but on the exact moment someone thinks they can get away with one. And everyone on that course could feel it. Something was going to snap, and it wasn't going to be her first. The sun had begun to fall sideways by the time the second circuit started. Shadows stretched across the range, long and thin, angled through the metal scaffolds. The heat hadn't gone anywhere. It had just changed color. Golden now, angrier somehow. Ren stood at the midpoint line, clipboard down, stopwatch ready. Her voice carried easily. Firm, even, no wasted breath. Weighted carry relay, 50 meters down and back. Maintain control of load and spacing. If your form breaks, so does your time. Boots thudded in the dirt. Grunts, exhale timing, sand spraying under momentum. The sound of bodies trying to prove something to someone who didn't need the proof. Briggs ran in the second column, muscle and ego wrapped tight together. Hale was just ahead of him, trying too hard to impress. Decker lagged, shoulders hunched, sweat already streaking his temples. At the 20-meter mark, Hale's grip slipped on the weighted duffel. 60 pounds of sand trying to pull him sideways. Ren stepped forward instinctively, 2 strides to steady it before it slammed into the dirt. "Reset your stance," she said. Calm, professional. Her hand moved toward Hale's wrist to correct his balance. And that's when Briggs came through. He wasn't supposed to be that close, wasn't supposed to break column spacing, but he broke it anyway, charging hard, pretending to overtake. The sound came first, boots skidding in sand, air splitting, then the impact. His knee drove straight into her rib cage, a clean, brutal line of motion hidden behind the pretense of speed. The hit was too sharp, too square to be an accident. She folded for half a second, breath leaving her chest with a low, involuntary sound. Not a cry, more like air forced through teeth. And then the whisper, low enough for only 2 people to hear. "Let's see if the Navy's duct tape holds up this time." Ren froze. The world contracted to one sound, a wet, brittle crack just beneath her sternum. Not loud, just final. 2 hairline fractures spiderwebbing across the titanium plates, exactly where the Taliban's IED had broken her the first time. Decker stopped moving. Hale's duffel hit the ground. Even the whistle from the tower hesitated before blowing again. Novak at the far end stared across the field. She had heard that whisper, words carried by wind and timing, and the kind of cruelty that doesn't need volume. Ren's hand went to her side. Her face didn't change, but her breathing shortened. Tight, measured inhales through the nose. The kind of breathing you do when your body's trying to protect something already broken. "Finish your circuit," she said. The recruits blinked, uncertain if they'd heard her right. "I said finish it." Her tone carried no volume, but it cut clean through the yard. Briggs half smirked, hands on his knees, pretending fatigue. "Guess that plate didn't hold, ma'am." She looked at him once, flat, unreadable, then clicked the stopwatch, wrote something down, and walked off the line. Every step was measured, deliberate. The pain radiated from her ribs like a slow electrical current, constant, sharp, demanding attention she refused to give it. She could feel the fractures shifting with each breath, could taste copper in the back of her throat from where she'd bitten down too hard. But her gait didn't change. Her shoulders didn't hunch. She'd learned a long time ago that the body could scream all it wanted. Command came from the mind. 17 steps from the circuit line to the medical bay entrance. She counted every one, not because she needed distraction, but because counting kept her focused, kept her from turning around and doing something that would give him exactly what he wanted. Proof that he'd gotten to her. No limp, no flinch, just precision in every step, as if refusing to give the pain even a single, uneven footprint. Behind her, Hale bent to pick up the duffel, eyes darting toward Briggs like he'd just realized what kind of man he was following. Novak didn't move. The echo of that sentence stayed in her ears long after the commander disappeared into the blinding white glare of the medbay doors. The medical bay at Camp Stryker always smelled like antiseptic in desert air, cold trying to hide inside heat. Wren sat on the edge of the steel table, boots still on, one hand pressed to her ribs while the medic slid the x-ray cassette beneath her arm. His hands were efficient, professional, but his eyes gave him away. "Deep breath," he said. She tried. The inhale caught halfway, sharp and shallow. The machine clicked once, twice. The medic frowned before the image even finished processing. He didn't need to say it. The break was visible even through the lead plate from her last surgery. 2 new hairline fractures, right where the rib had been rebuilt, right where it had cracked the first time. "Commander, this isn't something you walk off," he said quietly. "You're looking at a minimum of—" "I'm not looking at anything," she interrupted. Her tone didn't rise. "Just print the film." He hesitated. "Protocol requires I'm protocol," she said, meeting his eyes. "Print it." A few minutes later, she signed the limited duty waiver herself. No painkillers, no rest order. She tightened the tape wrap while he cleaned the room. Every movement deliberate, controlled, breathing through pain that would have flattened most men in the field. When he left, she exhaled slowly and peeled back the uniform top. The bruise had already begun to flower under the skin, dark purple turning black along the old scar line. The same spot, same story, just a different ending this time. She let her hand rest over it, and for a moment, the walls weren't white anymore. They were mud brown, cracked, echoing with the memory of Afghanistan. The memory faded with the steady beep of a monitor she didn't need. She pulled the tape tighter, wincing once, only once. Outside the curtain, someone hesitated. The shadow of a young recruit, boots half turned away. Novak. Wren knew the stance of someone deciding whether to knock. "Come in or go," Wren said without looking up. Novak didn't move, but her voice carried through the curtain. "Ma'am, he said it on purpose. I heard him, every word." Wren's hands stilled. "You have a good memory, specialist." "Yes, ma'am." "Then keep it. You'll need it tomorrow." Novak swallowed hard and backed away. Wren set her jaw, grabbed a pen, and opened a small notebook from her cargo pocket. Black cover, worn edges. She'd been carrying it for 10 days. On a clean page, she wrote in block letters. Day 10, 15:47 hours. Briggs, Kane, physical assault during weighted carry drill, deliberate knee strike to left rib cage, previous injury site, verbal threat. Let's see if the Navy's duct tape holds up this time. Witness, PFC Hale, Specialist Novak, Corporal Decker, present but participating. She underlined deliberate twice. Then she turned back 3 pages, reviewed her previous entries. Day 1, Day 3, Day 7, 14 incidents total. A pattern, documentation, evidence. She closed the notebook and slipped it back into her pocket. Pain radiated through her side like a live wire, but her posture didn't change. If discipline had a sound, it was the click of her pen closing. Final, certain, controlled. The admin building was cooler, air conditioning that worked most of the time. Wren walked the corridors with her uniform reset, tape hidden, face neutral. She found the office she was looking for at the end of the hall. Door open. Inside, Colonel Garrett Maddox sat behind a desk, covered in training reports and coffee rings. 64 years old, silver hair cut high and tight, face like weathered leather, eyes that had seen Mogadishu and Desert Storm and 1,000 training cycles since. On the wall behind him hung photographs. Maddox in his 20s, Force Recon somewhere in the Gulf, a framed Purple Heart, a silver star. And one photo that didn't match the others. A young woman in an Army flight suit standing beside a Black Hawk. Captain Sarah Maddox, his daughter. She died in Kandahar, 2009, when her helicopter took enemy fire during a medevac mission. She'd stayed on station to extract wounded Marines even after taking multiple hits, saved 6 lives, lost her own. They called her Iron's daughter before she became her own legend. Maddox looked up when Wren appeared in the doorway, took in her posture, the way she held her left side just a fraction tighter than her right, the controlled breathing. "Close the door, Lieutenant." She did. Stood at parade rest. Maddox leaned back in his chair. Didn't ask her to sit. Didn't ask what happened. He already knew. Stryker was a small base. Word traveled fast. "Briggs," he said, not a question. "Yes, sir." "You going to file a report?" "Not yet, sir." Maddox studied her, long enough that most officers would have started explaining. Wren just stood there, waiting. He nodded slowly. "I saw what happened on the range today. Saw it 3 days ago, too. And last week." "You're documenting it?" "Yes, sir." "Smart." He opened a drawer, pulled out a file folder, slid it across the desk. "So am I." Wren stepped forward, opened the file. Inside were incident reports, photocopies, 3 different women, 3 different bases, all involving Kane Briggs. Harassment, intimidation. One physical altercation that got him kicked out of Delta Force 2 years ago. All complaints either withdrawn or dismissed for lack of evidence. "He's done this before," Maddox said, "and the system let him slide. Because one incident isn't enough. Because women withdraw complaints under pressure. Because men like Briggs know how to work the gaps." Wren closed the file. "Why are you showing me this, sir?" "Because you're not going to withdraw." It wasn't a question. "And because I'm going to make sure you have what you need to bury him." She met his eyes, saw something there she recognized. Not pity, not protection, respect. The kind earned through fire. "I had a CO once," Maddox said. "Mogadishu, 93. Hated me because I was too aggressive, too young. Thought I didn't respect the chain. Filed 3 complaints against me, all dismissed. You know what I did?" "What, sir?" "I documented everything. Every order, every conversation, every time he tried to set me up to fail. Built a case so tight that when he finally crossed the line, I had 6 months of evidence to drop on the JAG's desk. He was reassigned within a week." Maddox tapped the file. "You want to beat Briggs. You don't react. You build. 1 brick at a time, until the wall's so high he can't climb over it." Wren nodded slowly. "Understood, sir." "Good." He paused, leaned forward. "Full disclosure, Lieutenant. I've been watching Briggs for 3 months, since he arrived at Stryker. Saw the pattern forming. I could have acted then. But 1 complaint from a CO isn't enough. The system protects men like him unless the evidence is overwhelming. That's why I waited for someone like you. Someone who'd fight back smart." Wren met his eyes. "You've been using me as bait, sir?" "I've been waiting for someone strong enough to be the hunter instead of the prey. There's a difference." He pulled out another document, blank training authorization form. "You'll need a scenario, something controlled, where his actions are documented beyond dispute. I'm thinking night operations, low-light CQB, comm channels open and recorded for safety review." He slid the form toward her. But he didn't pick up a pen, didn't fill it out, just left it there, waiting. This is your call, Lieutenant. I can authorize the training evolution, but you're the one who has to decide if you want to go down this road. Because once you do, there's no walking it back. Ren looked at the form, looked at the file, looked at the man who'd survived Mogadishu by being smarter than his enemies. She picked up the pen. I'll need range 47, sir. Simulated village, zero visibility, reflex evaluation protocol. Maddox almost smiled. When? Tomorrow night, 2200 hours. You'll have it. He took the form when she finished writing, signed it without reading. One piece of advice, Lieutenant, from an old man who's fought this kind of war before. Sir? Men like Briggs think patience is weakness. Prove them wrong. She came to attention. I will, sir. Dismissed. Ren turned to leave, stopped at the door. Colonel, your daughter, Captain Maddox. Maddox's expression didn't change, but his eyes shifted, just slightly. What about her? Did she ever deal with men like Briggs? Every day of her career. What did you tell her? Maddox was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, harder. I told her the same thing I'm telling you. Don't fight every battle, but the ones you choose, finish them. Ren nodded. I intend to, sir. She left. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Maddox sat alone in his office, staring at the photograph on the wall. His daughter smiled back at him. Frozen at 26. Forever young, forever gone. She's got your fire, sweetheart, he said quietly to the empty room. God help anyone who tries to put it out. Outside, the sun was setting over the Mojave, turning the desert the color of old blood. Ren walked back to her quarters, notebook in her pocket, tape tight around her ribs, and a plan forming in her mind. Brick by brick, one piece of evidence at a time. She'd learned patience in Hellman, learned it in 11 hours of holding her own chest together while her lung collapsed. Learned it in the months of rehab. The doctors who said she'd never deploy again. The people who thought broken meant finished. They were wrong then. Briggs was wrong now. She opened her notebook one more time, added a new entry. Day 10, 1820 hours. Meeting with Colonel Maddox. Authorization granted for night operations training, range 47. Comms will be recorded. Scenario designed to document pattern of behavior under controlled conditions. Legal and within protocol. Maddox has been tracking Briggs for 3 months. This is bigger than just me. She underlined within protocol 3 times. Then she wrote one more line, small. At the bottom of the page, patience isn't weakness, it's ammunition. She closed the notebook. The pain in her ribs was still there. Constant, sharp, demanding. She ignored it. Pain was just data, and data could be used. Tomorrow night, Briggs would provide all the evidence she needed. He just didn't know it yet. The desert wind picked up outside, carrying sand against the barracks windows, sounding like static, like the hiss of a radio before someone speaks. Ren sat on her bunk, boots still on, staring at nothing, waiting, the way a sniper waits, calm, controlled, inevitable. They thought breaking her ribs would break her spirit. They forgot she'd survived worse, survived the Taliban, survived the blast, survived 11 hours of her own blood in her mouth. What was one staff sergeant with a God complex compared to that? Nothing. He was nothing, but she'd let him think he was something, just long enough to hang himself with his own words. And then she'd show him what a SEAL does to people who mistake silence for surrender. The night was coming, and Ren Calloway had always done her best work in the dark. The bar was called the Dusty Boot, 10 miles off base, the kind of place where career enlisted men went to complain about officers and pretend they were still 25. Neon beer signs flickered in the windows. Country music bled through the walls. Kane Briggs sat at a corner booth with Flynn Decker and Wyatt Hale, 3 beers deep and feeling invincible. You see her face? Briggs was saying, grinning, gesturing with his bottle. Thought she was going to cry. Thought she was going to fold right there on the range. Decker laughed, took a pull from his own beer. She walked it off, though. Tough bitch, I'll give her that. Tough? Briggs snorted. She's held together with metal plates and pride. One more hit and she'll snap like a dry twig. Hale sat quiet, nursing his beer, not laughing. Something about the afternoon still sat wrong with him. The way Wren had walked away. 17 steps, perfect posture, like the pain didn't exist, like Briggs didn't exist. That wasn't weakness. That was something else. Something that made Hale's gut twist. What if she reports it? Hale said quietly. Briggs turned, fixed him with a look. Reports what? An accident during a training drill? She was in my lane, kid. I was maintaining pace. These things happen. You whispered something to her, Hale said. I heard you. You heard wrong. Briggs's voice went flat, cold. And even if you didn't, it's her word against mine, against ours. He looked between Decker and Hale. We were all there. We all saw it. Training accident. End of story. Decker nodded. End of story. Hale looked down at his beer, said nothing, but he didn't nod. Briggs noticed, leaned forward. You got a problem, Private? No, Sergeant. You sure? Because you look like you got something to say. Hale met his eyes. I just think maybe we should ease up. She's a SEAL. She's got 52 confirmed kills. She's not some boot we can push around. Briggs smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. 52 kills don't mean shit if your body's broken, and hers is. I felt those ribs crack today, felt it through my knee. She's one bad fall away from a medical discharge, and I'm going to make sure she gets it. Why? The word came out before Hale could stop it. Why? Briggs sat back, took a long drink. Because women don't belong in combat roles. They're a liability. They get special treatment, lower standards, and then they act like they earn their spot. He pointed the bottle at Hale. She didn't earn that trident. The Navy gave it to her because it makes good PR, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. Decker raised his bottle. Amen to that. Hale said nothing, just drank his beer and wondered when he'd become the kind of man who sat quiet while good people got hurt. His father had been a Marine, served in Desert Storm. Always said there were two types of men in the military, the ones who served with honor, and the ones who hid their weakness behind cruelty. Hale was starting to realize which type he was sitting with. While Briggs drank and plotted 10 miles away, Wren sat alone in her quarters with the door locked and the lights off. The pain in her ribs had settled into a constant throb. Deep, bone deep, the kind of pain that made every breath a conscious decision. She'd taken nothing for it. No pills, no ice. Pain was another variable to manage, and she needed to stay sharp. On the small desk beside her bunk, she'd spread out her materials. The notebook with 14 days of documentation. The training authorization form Maddox had signed. A printed copy of the comms system specifications for Range 47. And a blank piece of paper where she was sketching the simulated village layout from memory. 15 buildings. Concrete shells arranged like a small Afghan village. She'd trained there dozens of times, knew every corner, every firing lane, every shadow. Building 9 had the best vantage point. Second floor, windows facing the main corridor. Good sight lines, 2 exits. She marked it on her sketch. The plan was simple, elegantly simple. Give Briggs exactly what he wanted. A chance to come at her in the dark, away from witnesses, where he'd feel safe, confident, and let him talk, let him brag, let him make threats over an open comm channel that was being recorded for mandatory safety review. Standard protocol for night operations. Nothing suspicious, nothing that would make him cautious. And when he finally made his move, when he put his hands on her with intent to harm, she'd defend herself. Within the rules of engagement, within the authorized training parameters, And every second of it would be documented. Audio, video, thermal imaging, irrefutable. She looked at the sketch, traced the path she'd take through the village, the route she'd use to draw him in. Building 3 to Building 7. Leave a false trail. Make him think he was hunting her, when really, she was the one setting the trap. A knock at the door broke her focus. Wren swept the papers into the desk drawer, pulled on a sweatshirt to hide the tape around her ribs. Opened the door. Specialist Harper Novak stood outside, backpack slung over one shoulder, nervous energy radiating off her like heat. "Ma'am, can we talk?" Wren stepped aside, let her in, closed the door. Novak paced for a moment, then stopped, turned. "I heard what Briggs said today, the thing he whispered, about the duct tape." "I know you did." "That wasn't an accident, ma'am. What he did, the way he came at you, that was deliberate." "I know." Novak's hands clenched into fists. "So why didn't you report it? Why didn't you have him arrested right there?" Wren sat on the edge of her bunk, gestured for Novak to sit in the desk chair. "Because one incident isn't enough. The system doesn't work that way. He'd claim it was an accident. I'd claim it was assault. It becomes he said, she said. And guess who the board believes?" "That's bullshit, ma'am." "That's reality." Wren leaned forward. "I've been documenting Briggs for 10 days. 14 separate incidents. Verbal harassment, intimidation, pattern of behavior. But none of it was physical until today. None of it was prosecutable. And now? Now I have physical assault, medical evidence, witnesses." Wren met Novak's eyes. "But I need more. I need intent. I need him to show, on record, that this wasn't a one-time mistake, that it's part of a deliberate pattern of trying to force me out." Understanding dawned on Novak's face. "The night drill tomorrow, range 47. "You're running comms," Wren said. "Standard 6-channel system. Everything buffered and recorded for post-training review. Completely normal protocol. And if he says something incriminating over the comm, then it's documented, time-stamped, admissible." Novak was quiet for a long moment. "Ma'am, this is basically entrapment." "No, entrapment is when you force someone to commit a crime they wouldn't otherwise commit. I'm not forcing Briggs to do anything. I'm just giving him the opportunity to show who he really is. In a controlled environment, under authorized training parameters. And if he doesn't take the bait, then I have 14 incidents of harassment and 1 assault. Still enough to file charges. But if he does take the bait, if he makes threats or attempts another assault, then I have intent, premeditation, pattern of behavior. The kind of case that doesn't get dismissed or buried." Novak nodded slowly. "What do you need from me? Run the comms like any other drill. Buffer everything. Flag any statements that reference me, violence, or intent. Don't alter anything. Don't hide anything. Just document." "I can do that." "Good," Wren stood. "This stays between us, not because it's wrong, but because if Briggs thinks it's a setup, he'll be careful. I need him comfortable, confident, thinking he's getting away with something." Novak stood too, came to attention. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why are you doing this? You could file charges right now. Medical evidence, witnesses, you'd probably win." "Probably isn't good enough," Wren said quietly. "Briggs has done this before. To other women, at other bases. And the system let him slide because the evidence wasn't strong enough. Because the women withdrew their complaints. Because men like him know how to work the system." She paused. "I'm not doing this just for me. I'm doing it so the next woman doesn't have to." Novak's eyes were bright. She nodded once, sharp. "Roger that, ma'am." After Novak left, Wren pulled the papers back out, studied the village layout, ran through the scenario in her mind. Every step, every contingency. She'd learned planning from the SEALs. Measure twice, cut once, leave nothing to chance. The pain in her ribs pulsed with her heartbeat. Steady, constant. She pressed her hand against it, felt the outline of the titanium plates under skin and muscle. They'd saved her life in Helmand, kept the bone fragments from shredding her lung completely, let her survive long enough to get on that helicopter. Now they were markers, targets, the place Briggs had chosen to hurt her because he knew it was already broken. But broken didn't mean finished. Broken meant tested, proven, still standing. She'd walked 17 steps on 2 fractured ribs without flinching. Tomorrow night, she'd show Briggs what that kind of strength looked like when it stopped being patient. Her phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. She almost deleted it, then saw the area code. Local. She opened it. Lieutenant, this is Wyatt Hale. We met on the range. I need to talk to you. It's about Sergeant Briggs. Can we meet? Wren stared at the message. Hale, the young private, 21, impressionable. She'd seen him following Briggs around like a lost dog, but she'd also seen his face after the knee strike, the way he'd looked at Briggs, like he was seeing something he didn't want to see. She typed back, when and where? The response came fast. 0600 tomorrow, East Running Trail, before anyone else is up. I'll be there. She set the phone down, leaned back against the wall, closed her eyes. Tomorrow was going to be a long day, but long days were nothing new. She'd had 11-hour days with a collapsed lung. She'd had 6-month days in rehab learning to breathe again. This was just another kind of endurance, another test. And Wren Calloway didn't fail tests. The desert at dawn was almost beautiful. Almost. The sky went from black to purple to orange in the space of 30 minutes. The air was cool, 60 degrees. It wouldn't last. By noon, it would be 110 again. But for now, in the brief window between night and day, the Mojave was almost peaceful. Wren ran the East Trail at 0545, 3 miles, easy pace. Her ribs screamed with every footfall. She ignored them. Pain was a constant companion. You learned to run with it, or you stopped running. She'd stopped running once, in the hospital, when the doctors said she might never deploy again, never run again. Never do anything again except sit behind a desk and remember what it felt like to be whole. She'd proven them wrong, and she'd proved Briggs wrong too. Hale was waiting at the 3-mile marker, sitting on a rock, dressed in PT gear. He stood when he saw her, came to attention out of habit. Wren slowed to a walk, stopped 10 feet away, breathing hard but controlled. At ease, Private. You wanted to talk? Hale nodded, looked around. They were alone. Nothing but sand and scrub brush in the distant fence line of the base. He seemed to gather himself, then spoke. Ma'am, what Sergeant Briggs did yesterday, on the range, that wasn't an accident. I know. I heard what he said to you, the thing about the duct tape, and I saw his face after. He was smiling, ma'am, like he'd won something. Wren said nothing, just waited. Hale continued. Last night at the bar, he was bragging about it, said he felt your ribs crack. Said he's going to keep pushing until you break completely, until you take a medical discharge. Why are you telling me this? Hale met her eyes. Because it's wrong, ma'am. My dad was a Marine, served in Desert Storm. He always said there were 2 types of men in uniform, the ones who serve with honor and the ones who hide their weakness behind cruelty. Briggs is the second type, and I don't want to be. Wren studied him, 21 years old, baby-faced, probably joined up right out of high school, still believed in things like honor and right and wrong. The military hadn't beaten that out of him yet. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe he'd be one of the good ones. What do you want from me, Private? Permission to testify, ma'am. If you file charges, I'll tell them what I saw, what I heard, all of it. That'll make you a pariah. Briggs has friends. So does Decker. You'll be labeled a snitch, a traitor. Your career here will be over before it starts. I know, ma'am. Hale's voice was steady. But I can't look at myself in the mirror if I stay quiet. My dad didn't raise me that way. Wren was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, but not yet. I need you to stay close to Briggs. Act normal. Don't let him know you're having doubts. Why? Because there's a training drill tonight. Range 47. Night operations. You're on the roster. Yes, ma'am, I saw that. Briggs is going to do something tonight. Say something. Maybe try something. And I need you to be there. As a witness. Can you do that? Hale straightened. Yes, ma'am. Good. Keep your calm on. Stay professional. And remember everything. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. Dismissed. Hale turned to go. Stopped. Looked back. Ma'am, for what it's worth, I think you're the toughest person I've ever met. And I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. You're saying something now. That's what matters. He nodded and ran back toward the base. Wren watched him go, then turned and ran the other direction. 3 more miles, pushing through the pain, using it. Anger was fuel if you burned it right, and she had 10 days of anger stored up, ready to ignite. The day crawled past. Morning PT, admin work, equipment checks. Wren moved through it all with mechanical precision. Her ribs throbbed. She ignored them. At lunch, she ate alone. At 1400 hours, she walked the perimeter of Range 47. Memorizing, confirming. Building 9 still had the best vantage. Building 7 had good concealment. Building 3 was the obvious first search point. She'd leave a marker there, lead them on. At 1700 hours, she met with Novak in the comm shack. Went over the buffer system, 6 channels, audio recorded to triple redundant drives, time-stamped, GPS tagged, tamper-proof, standard safety protocol for live fire exercises. This wasn't live fire, but it was night ops in a confined space, close enough to justify the precaution. All 6 channels buffer automatically, Novak confirmed, but I can flag specific segments for review, mark them for command attention. Do that for anything involving names, threats, or physical violence. Roger, ma'am. And Novak, if something goes wrong tonight, if Briggs does something that puts anyone in real danger, you shut it down. Lights on. Drill terminated. Understood? Understood, ma'am. Good. At 1900 hours, Wren went to the medical bay. The same medic from yesterday looked up when she entered, frowned. Commander, you're not due for a follow-up until next week. I need my ribs retaped, tighter. I have a training evolution tonight. Ma'am, with all respect, you should be on light duty for at least... I didn't ask for a medical opinion. I asked for tape. The medic's jaw tightened. But he got the tape. Wren removed her shirt. The bruise had spread, purple and black, covering most of her left side. The medic whistled low. Commander, this is serious. You need rest. I need tape. Now. He taped her, tighter than before, compressing the ribs, limiting movement. It hurt worse than the injury itself. Good. Pain kept you sharp, kept you focused. When he finished, Wren pulled her shirt back on, tested her range of motion. Limited, but functional. Thanks. Ma'am, if those ribs shift during tonight's drill, they won't. She left before he could argue. Walked back to her quarters, changed into field gear, plate carrier, NVGs, sidearm. This was supposed to be a non-lethal training evolution, simulated weapons only. But she wore the full kit anyway. Realism, that's what she'd tell anyone who asked. Really, she just wanted the weight, the familiar pressure, the reminder of who she was, what she'd survived. At 2100 hours, she walked to the briefing room. Maddox was there, standing at the back, arms crossed. He caught her eye, gave a single nod. She nodded back. The recruits filed in. Briggs, Decker, Hale, 2 Navy recruits she didn't know well. They took seats. Wren stood at the front. Tonight's evolution is a low-light reflex drill. You'll be moving through the simulated village at range 47. Your objective is to locate a beacon hidden somewhere in the AO. Rules are simple. Maintain calm discipline. Move tactically. Engage only on confirmed contact. Questions? Briggs raised his hand, smirking. Will you be observing from the TOC, ma'am? Or are you joining us in the field? I'll be in the field. OPFOR. If you encounter me, standard ROE applies. Positive ID before engagement. Looking forward to it, ma'am. The way he said it made Ren's skin crawl, but she kept her face neutral. Com check at 21:30, movement at 2200. Brief your teams. Dismissed. They filed out. Briggs was grinning. Decker looked nervous. Hale looked sick. Good. Fear made you careful, and Hale needed to be careful tonight. Wren waited until the room cleared. Maddox approached. You sure about this, Lieutenant? Yes, sir. If he comes at you, I'll defend myself. Within ROE. Maddox studied her face. You've got 2 fractured ribs. If he hits you in the same spot, then I'll have assault with intent to cause serious bodily harm, on top of everything else. Or you'll have a punctured lung and a medical discharge. I've had a punctured lung before, sir. I survived. Maddox shook his head. You've got your daughter's fire. You say that like it's a bad thing. It got her killed. The words hung in the air. Wren met his eyes. Sir, I appreciate your concern, but this is my call, and I'm making it. Maddox was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. Okay, but I'm watching the thermal feed. Anything goes sideways, I'm shutting it down. Fair enough. He turned to leave, stopped. Lieutenant, you asked me yesterday what I told Sarah about men like Briggs. Yes, sir. I told her don't fight every battle, but the ones you choose, finish them. He looked back at her. So finish this, but come back in one piece, because I don't want to write another letter to another family telling them their daughter died, proving a point. You won't have to, sir. He left, and Wren was alone in the briefing room. She closed her eyes, took 3 deep breaths, felt the tape around her ribs, the weight of the plate carrier, the familiar grip of her sidearm. This was it. Everything she'd been building toward for 10 days. All the documentation, all the patience, all the pain. Tonight, Kane Briggs would hang himself with his own words, and she'd be there to pull the rope tight. At 21:45, Wren walked to Range 47. The simulated village sat dark against the desert sky. No moon. Good. Darkness was her element. She'd learned to hunt in darkness in Afghanistan, learned to move without sound, to wait without breathing, to kill without hesitation. Tonight, she wouldn't kill, but she'd do something almost as final. She'd end a career. The calm crackled in her ear. Novak's voice. Professional. Calm. All stations, this is TOC. Comm check. One by one, the teams checked in. Briggs, Decker, Hale, the 2 Navy recruits. All present, all ready. Wren keyed her mic. Reaper to TOC. In position. Ready to play. Copy, Reaper. Hunters, you are cleared to begin. Game is live. Good hunting. In the operations center a quarter-mile away, Novak sat in front of 6 monitors, 6 comm channels, all recording, all buffered. Her finger hovered over the flag button. Ready. Waiting. Behind her, Maddox stood with arms crossed, watching the thermal feed, watching the heat signatures move through the village like ghosts. And in Building 9, second floor, Lieutenant Commander Wren Calloway settled into position with her NVGs down and her breathing controlled. The pain in her ribs was distant, manageable, just another variable. She watched Briggs enter the village from the south, watched him move fast, sloppy, overconfident, exactly like she'd predicted. The hunt had begun, but Briggs didn't know he was the prey, not yet. He'd figure it out soon enough, when the trap closed, when his own words became his conviction, when he realized that the woman he'd tried to break was the one holding all the cards. Wren smiled in the darkness, cold, certain, patient. The Reaper had always done her best work in the dark, and tonight would be no different. 2,200 hours. The simulated village at Range 47 sat under a moonless sky like a graveyard of concrete and shadow. No lights, no sound except the wind moving through empty doorways and the distant hum of generators powering the thermal imaging system. The temperature had dropped to 78 degrees. Still hot, but compared to the daylight inferno, it felt almost cool. Through her night vision goggles, Ren watched the green-tinted world below. Building 9, second floor, window facing south. She'd positioned herself with her back to the corner. NVGs flipped up, relying on natural night vision. The human eye adapts to darkness in about 20 minutes if you let it. She'd been waiting 30. Every shadow had shape now. Every sound had distance. Below, in the main corridor between buildings 3 and 7, she watched Briggs move. His thermal signature glowed white-hot through the thermal scope mounted on the tripod beside her. He was moving fast, too fast, breaking tactical movement protocol, not checking corners, not clearing rooms, just charging forward like this was a race instead of a combat exercise. Decker followed 10 meters behind, more cautious, checking his 6, but still following Briggs's lead. And 30 meters back, moving alone, was Hale. The private was doing everything right, proper spacing, weapon up, scanning corners, like he'd actually paid attention during training, or like he knew something bad was coming and wanted to be ready. Ren keyed her mic, whisper soft. Reaper to TOC. I have visual on all players, initiating phase 1. Novak's voice came back, professional, steady. Copy, Reaper. All channels recording. You're green across the board. Ren reached into her cargo pocket and pulled out a small IR chem light. Infrared. Invisible to the naked eye but bright as a flare through night vision. She cracked it, placed it on the windowsill of Building 3. First floor. East side. Briggs would see it. Would think he'd found the beacon. Would move toward it. The bait was set. She watched through the thermal scope as Briggs rounded the corner of Building 7. Saw him stop. Saw him raise his NVGs. He'd spotted the chem light. His body language changed. Aggressive. Confident. He said something to Decker. The words didn't carry, but his intent was clear. He thought he'd won. Ren smiled in the darkness. Patience. Let him get comfortable. Let him think he's in control. Then take it away. Briggs moved toward Building 3, fast, weapon lowered, sloppy. He hit the doorway without slowing, disappeared inside. 10 seconds later, his voice crackled over the comm. Channel 2, the one reserved for team leaders. Decker, I got something. Building 3, first floor east. Looks like a chem light. Decker's response. The beacon? Negative, it's IR. Someone's fucking with us. There was a pause. Then Briggs's voice again, lower, angrier. It's her. She's playing games. Want me to sweep the area? No, stay on my 6. She thinks she's clever. Let's show her what happens when you play games with the wrong people. In the TOC, Novak's finger moved. She tapped the flag button. The audio segment was marked. Time-stamped. 22:07 hours. Threat implied. She glanced at Maddox. He was watching the thermal feed. Face unreadable. He gave her a slight nod. Keep recording. Ren switched positions. Moved from Building 9 to Building 7. Second floor. Different angle. She needed to keep them moving. Keep them talking. The longer Briggs stayed on comms, the more evidence he'd provide. She placed another IR chem light, this time in Building 7, ground floor, near the back exit. Then she moved to the roof. Low crawl, staying below the sightline. From the roof, she had a god's eye view of the entire village. She could see all 5 players. Briggs and Decker were still in Building 3. The 2 Navy recruits were moving through the north side of the village. Proper formation. Good discipline. They wouldn't be a problem. And Hale was holding position near Building 5. Smart. He wasn't charging in. He was waiting. Watching. Briggs emerged from Building 3, frustrated. Wren could read his body language even from 100 meters away. The way he moved, sharp, aggressive. A man who wasn't getting what he wanted. He keyed his comm again. "This is bullshit. She's wasting our time. When I find her, I'm putting her on her ass." Decker laughed. "Roger that, Sarge. I'm serious. She wants to play operator? Let's see how she handles a real confrontation. No rules, no refs, just her and me." Flag. Novak marked it. 22:14 hours. Threat of violence. Explicit intent. Wren keyed her mic. Calm. Professional. "All players, this is Reaper. Reminder that engagement is only authorized on positive ID and within ROE. Excessive force will result in drill termination." Briggs's response was immediate. "Copy that, ma'am. Wouldn't dream of using excessive force." But the way he said it, the tone, it was mockery, challenge, and everyone on the comm heard it. Wren let it slide, let him talk, let him build his own grave, one word at a time. She moved again. Building 4, ground level. She left the second IR chem light where it was. Wanted Briggs to find it. Wanted him to get angrier. Frustrated men made mistakes. And she needed him to make a big one. She positioned herself in a corner room, single entrance, good cover, and waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Through her NVGs, she watched Briggs and Decker move through Building 7. Saw them find the second chem light. Saw Briggs kick it across the room. His voice came over the comm, not even trying to hide his anger now. "2 fake beacons. She's jerking us around. Decker, sweep north. I'm going to find this bitch and end this." "You want me to help?" "No. I want you to stay out of my way. This is between me and her." Flag. 22:28 hours. Personal vendetta. Intent to isolate target. Maddox leaned forward in the TOC, watching Briggs's thermal signature separate from Decker's. Moving alone now. Hunting. He spoke quietly to Novak. "He's going off script. If he finds her..." "She can handle herself, sir." "That's not what I'm worried about." Maddox's jaw was tight. "I'm worried she's going to hurt him too badly, and then this whole thing falls apart." Novak didn't respond, just kept her finger near the emergency shutdown button, just in case. Wren heard Briggs before she saw him. Heavy boots on concrete, not even trying to move quietly anymore. He was angry, sloppy, perfect. She pressed herself into the corner, controlled her breathing, slowed her heart rate, became part of the darkness. A skill learned in Hellman, learned in a dozen missions where staying invisible meant staying alive. Briggs entered Building 4. She could hear him moving through the ground floor, opening doors, clearing rooms, getting closer. She had 2 options: stay hidden and let him pass, or reveal herself and force the confrontation. She chose the second, because hiding wouldn't give her what she needed. She needed him to act, to threaten, to cross the line in a way that couldn't be denied or explained away. She keyed her mic, let her voice carry through the building. "Building 4, second floor. If you're looking for me, Sergeant, I'm right here." Silence. Then footsteps, fast, climbing stairs. Briggs's voice, close now, maybe 20 feet away. "Finally. Thought you were going to hide all night." "I don't hide." "No, you just run. Like you ran from that IED in Afghanistan. Like you'll run from me." Wren stepped out of the corner, into the center of the room, NVGs down. She could see him clearly now, standing in the doorway, weapon lowered, not treating this like a training exercise anymore, treating it like something personal. "I didn't run from the IED, Sergeant. I pushed my medic out of the way and took the blast myself. 5 ribs shattered, lung collapsed. I stayed conscious for 11 hours giving orders while I drowned in my own blood. That's not running. That's command." Briggs laughed. "Command? You're a diversity hire with a trident you didn't earn. The Navy gave you that pin for PR, Not because you deserved it. My qualification scores are posted. My mission record is classified, but verified. I earned every inch of this uniform. Bullshit. You earned a medical discharge, and I'm going to make sure you get it. There it was, clear, unambiguous, intent. Wren keyed her mic, made sure every word was transmitted. Sergeant Briggs, are you threatening a superior officer? I'm promising one. He took a step forward. You don't belong here. You're weak, broken, and tonight I'm going to prove it. Flag, 22:34 hours, direct threat, insubordination, intent to harm. In the TOC, Maddox stood. That's enough, shut it down. Novak's hand moved toward the emergency button, but Wren's voice came through first. Calm, cold, final. Negative TOC, drill continues. Sergeant Briggs, you are out of line. Stand down immediately. Make me. And he charged. No warning, no tactical movement, just raw aggression. Crossing the room in 3 strides, reaching for her. Wren had been waiting for it, expecting it. She sidestepped, let his momentum carry him past her, used his own weight against him, grabbed his extended arm, twisted, applied pressure to the wrist joint. Basic hand-to-hand combat, taught to every SEAL in Bood/S. She didn't strike him, didn't hurt him, just controlled him, forced him down to one knee. Stand down, Sergeant. He tried to pull free, couldn't. She had the leverage, had the angle, had 6 years of combat experience against his raw strength. He growled, tried to swing his other arm around. She released the wrist lock, stepped back, let him stand. He came at her again, this time with a wild haymaker. Telegraph, obvious. She ducked under it, stepped inside his guard, palm strike to the solar plexus. Controlled, measured, just enough force to wind him, not enough to cause real damage. He staggered back, gasping. I said, stand down. Fuck you. He came again, and this time Wren stopped playing defensive. She caught his arm mid-swing, stepped behind him, applied a standing rear naked choke, not to unconsciousness, just to control, just to make a point. She spoke directly into his ear, quiet, calm, deadly. Every move you've made tonight has been recorded. Every threat, every assault. You buried yourself, Sergeant, and you don't even know it. She felt him stiffen, felt the moment of realization. She released the choke, pushed him forward. He stumbled, caught himself against the wall, turned. His face was red, eyes wild, and in that moment Wren saw something change, saw desperation replace anger, saw a man who knew he'd made a mistake and was trying to find a way out. This was a setup, he said, voice hoarse. You planned this. I planned a training exercise. You planned an assault. There's a difference. The comms, you've been recording. Standard protocol for night operations. You signed the safety brief. You acknowledge the recording policy. His hands clenched into fists. No one's going to believe you. It's your word against mine. Wren pulled a small device from her vest. Audio recorder. Independent backup. She held it up. It's not my word, Sergeant. It's yours. Every threat, every admission, time-stamped and documented. And before you think about destroying evidence, there are 3 separate recording systems running right now. TOC has everything, and they've been flagging your statements in real time. Briggs's face went pale. Even in the green tint of night vision, she could see it, the color draining, the reality setting in. He'd been played, manipulated, led into a trap of his own making, and there was no way out. You bitch, he whispered. That's the 5th time you've used that word tonight, all on record, along with your threats, your assault, your stated intent to force me into a medical discharge. Congratulations, Sergeant. You've given me everything I need to end your career. For a moment, she thought he might try again, might charge her one more time out of sheer desperation. but the fight had gone out of him. He sagged against the wall, defeated, broken, the way he tried to break her. Ren keyed her mic. "TOC, this is Reaper. Drill is terminated. Lights up." All players return to assembly point. Novak's voice. "Copy, Reaper. Initiating shutdown." The lights came on, harsh white halogens flooding the village. Ren removed her NVGs, blinked against the sudden brightness. Briggs was still against the wall. Decker appeared in the doorway, took one look at the scene, at Briggs's face, and understood. Everything had gone wrong. "Sarge, what?" "Shut up, Decker." But Decker didn't shut up. He pulled out his phone, held it up. "I got it all, Sarge. She attacked you. I recorded it." Ren's stomach dropped for half a second. She hadn't planned for this. A counter-evidence. Video showing her in a chokehold on Briggs. Out of context, it could look bad. Very bad. But then, Novak's voice crackled over the comm. "Corporal Decker, confirm your statement. You recorded the confrontation?" Decker looked confused. "Yeah, I did. Shows her attacking the sergeant." "Interesting, because at 22:51 hours, you stated over open comm, and I quote, 'Just like you did with her ribs, Sarge?' Are you admitting on record that you were aware of Sergeant Briggs's prior assault and conspiracy to commit further assault?" Decker's face went white. The phone slipped in his hand. He just incriminated himself. On tape, with his own voice. Trying to provide evidence for Briggs, he'd instead confirmed conspiracy. Hale arrived next. Then the two Navy recruits. They stood in the doorway, silent, watching. Ren looked at each of them. Her voice was calm, professional, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just dismantled a man's career in under 30 minutes. "Exercise concluded. Secure your equipment and report to the TOC for debrief. Dismissed." They left, all except Briggs. He stayed against the wall, staring at nothing. Ren stood in the center of the room. Her ribs were screaming. The tape had held but barely. She could feel the fractures grinding with every breath, could taste blood in her mouth from where she'd bitten her cheek during the chokehold. But her posture didn't change. Her face didn't show pain. "You should have left me alone, Sergeant," she said quietly. "I would have finished my rotation here and moved on. But you couldn't do that. You had to push, had to prove something, and now you've lost everything." "I'll fight this," he said, but there was no conviction in it. "You'll lose. The evidence is overwhelming. Audio, video, medical records, witness statements, pattern of behavior documented over 14 days. And the best part? I never broke a single rule. Everything I did tonight was within authorized training parameters. Everything you did was assault, insubordination, and conduct unbecoming." She walked past him, stopped at the door, looked back. "Pain fades, Sergeant, but conduct stays on record. Remember that." And she left him there, alone in the harsh white light. A man who'd mistaken silence for weakness and paid the price. The TOC was quiet when Ren entered. Novak sat at the comm station, hands shaking slightly, staring at the screens. Maddox stood behind her, arms crossed, face unreadable. He looked up when Ren walked in. "Lieutenant, you hurt?" "No, sir." "Your ribs?" "Intact." He studied her, saw through the lie, but didn't call her on it. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the most reckless. "It was necessary, sir." "Necessary." He shook his head. "You could have been seriously injured. If he'd hit you in the right spot." "He didn't. Because you're lucky, not because you were safe." "I wasn't trying to be safe, sir. I was trying to end this." Maddox was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed, turned to Novak. "Specialists compile all flagged audio segments. Cross-reference with thermal footage. I want a complete timeline on my desk in 2 hours." "Yes, sir." He looked back at Ren. "My office. Now." They walked in silence, across the compound, past the barracks where lights were starting to come on as word spread about what had happened at Range 47, into the admin building, down the hallway to Maddox's office. He closed the door behind them, gestured to a chair. Ren sat. He didn't. "Do you know what you've done?" he said. "I've documented a pattern of harassment and assault. I've gathered evidence sufficient to bring charges against Sergeant Briggs under UCMJ Articles 93 and 128. And I've protected future service members from a predator who's been getting away with this behavior for years. You've also painted a target on your back. Briggs has friends. So does Decker. They'll call this entrapment, a setup, a vendetta. Let them. The evidence speaks for itself." Maddox leaned against his desk. "You're right, it does, which is why this is going to JAG review first thing tomorrow morning. Captain Victoria Locke, she's tough but fair. She'll review the evidence and make a determination." "When?" 0800, Command Room 2. You, Briggs, Decker, and Hale will testify. Novak will present technical evidence. I'll provide context." "Understood, sir." He looked at her, really looked at her. "Why didn't you just file assault charges after the range incident? You had medical evidence, witnesses. You could have ended this 10 days ago. Because one incident can be explained away, disputed, dismissed. I've seen it happen before. To other women, at other bases. The system doesn't protect us unless the evidence is overwhelming. So I made it overwhelming. By putting yourself in danger. By doing my job, sir. I'm a SEAL. Danger is the job." Maddox shook his head, walked to the window, stared out at the darkened compound. Sarah said the same thing, before her last mission. "Danger is the job, Dad. It's what I signed up for." And then she died proving a point to people who didn't care. "Sir, I don't want that for you, Lieutenant. You're a good officer, a good soldier, but you're so focused on winning this battle that you're not thinking about the cost." "What cost?" He turned. "Your health, your career, your peace of mind. You've got 2 fractured ribs. You should be on medical leave. Instead, you're out there fighting hand to hand with men who outweigh you by 70 pounds. What happens when those ribs don't heal right? When the titanium plates shift? When you can't deploy anymore because your body's too broken? Then I'll deal with it. But I won't deal with it while men like Briggs are still in uniform, hurting people, getting away with it." Maddox was quiet. Then he nodded, slowly. "You've got your own fire, and just as much courage. I hope it serves you better than it served her." "Me too, sir. Get some rest, Lieutenant. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." "Yes, sir." She stood, came to attention. He returned the salute. She turned to leave. His voice stopped her. "Lieutenant, off the record, I'm proud of what you did tonight. Not the tactics. Those were reckless and borderline insubordinate. But the principle, standing up for yourself and others, that takes courage. The kind the military needs more of." The pain crashed over her like a wave. She doubled over, hand pressed to her ribs, breathing in short, sharp gasps. For a moment she thought she might pass out. The room tilted. She grabbed the edge of her desk, held on, forced herself to breathe. Slow, controlled. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The way they'd taught her in survival training. The way she'd taught herself in Helmand while waiting for the helicopter that might not come. The wave passed. She straightened, walked to the small mirror mounted on the wall, lifted her shirt. The bruise had spread, covered most of her left side now, purple and black and yellow at the edges. The tape was cutting into her skin, leaving red marks. She wanted to take it off, wanted to breathe freely, but she didn't, because tomorrow she'd have to stand in front of a JAG officer and present evidence. And she couldn't afford to show weakness. Couldn't afford to give Briggs's lawyers any ammunition to claim she'd exaggerated her injuries. So she left the tape on, swallowed 2 aspirin with water from the sink, and lay down on her bunk, staring at the ceiling, too wired to sleep, too exhausted to move. Her phone buzzed. Text message, Novak. Ma'am, audio compilation complete. 17 flag segments. Timestamps and transcripts attached. You were right. He buried himself. Wren opened the attachment, read through the transcripts, each one worse than the last. Each one another nail in Briggs's coffin. By the time she finished, she was almost smiling. Almost. Because there was still tomorrow, still the hearing, still the possibility that somehow, some way, the system would find a way to protect Briggs and bury her. She'd seen it happen before. Good cases thrown out on technicalities. Evidence dismissed because of procedural errors. Women forced to withdraw complaints under pressure. The military was better than it used to be, but it wasn't perfect. And men like Briggs knew how to exploit the gaps. But this time would be different. This time the evidence was too strong, too clear, too documented. And if they tried to bury it, she'd go public. Media, Congress, social media, she'd burn every bridge and salt the earth behind her, because some battles were worth losing everything for. Her phone buzzed again. Different number. She almost ignored it, then saw it was Hale. Ma'am, I know it's late, but I wanted you to know. I'm testifying tomorrow. Everything I saw, everything I heard, I'm done being silent. She typed back. Thank you, Private. That takes courage. You taught me that, ma'am. Tonight, the way you handled Briggs, you could have hurt him badly, but you didn't. You stayed in control, stayed professional. That's real strength, not what he does, what you did. Wren stared at the message, felt something tight in her chest. Not pain this time, something else. Pride, maybe, or hope. That maybe, just maybe, there were more Hales out there than Briggs's. More people willing to stand up than stay silent. She set the phone down, closed her eyes, and for the first time in 10 days, she slept. Not well, not deeply, but she slept. Because the hard part was over. The evidence was gathered. The trap was sprung. All that remained was the verdict. And Wren Calloway had learned a long time ago that you couldn't control the verdict, only the evidence. And the evidence was undeniable. 0700 hours. Wren woke to her alarm, showered, changed into a fresh uniform, checked her ribs in the mirror. The bruise was worse. The swelling had increased overnight, but the fractures hadn't shifted. The tape had held. She rewrapped it, tighter, grimacing through the pain, then dressed, boots polished, uniform pressed, hair regulation, everything by the book. Because today wasn't about being tough, it was about being professional, unimpeachable, beyond reproach. At 0745, she walked to Command Room 2. The hallway was empty, quiet. She was early, preferred it that way, gave her time to settle, to prepare. She entered the room. Long, rectangular table, chairs on both sides. At the head of the table sat Captain Victoria Locke, 42 years old, JAG officer, 20 years in service, reputation for being tough but fair. She looked up when Wren entered. Lieutenant Calloway, you're early. Yes, ma'am. Habit. Good habit. Locke gestured to a chair. Sit. We've got 15 minutes before this officially starts. I've reviewed the preliminary evidence, audio transcripts, thermal footage, medical reports, your documentation log. And it's comprehensive, thorough, damning. Locke leaned back. I've been doing this job for 12 years. I've seen a lot of harassment cases, a lot of assault cases. Most of them fall apart because the evidence is weak. He said, she said, conflicting testimony, no documentation. But this, she tapped the file in front of her. This is textbook. You did everything right. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me yet. Sergeant Briggs has retained counsel. He's claiming entrapment, claiming you orchestrated last night's drill specifically to provoke him into making statements that could be used against him. I organized a legitimate training evolution, ma'am. He chose to make threats and commit assault. That's on him. I agree, but his lawyer will argue that by baiting him, you compromise the integrity of the evidence, that any statements he made were under duress or provocation. He assaulted me on the range 10 days ago, ma'am, long before last night's drill. The medical evidence confirms fractures consistent with a knee strike. That's not provocation, that's assault. Everything after that was documentation. Locke nodded. Which is why I think you'll win this. But I want you to be prepared. His lawyer is going to try to make you the villain, going to paint you as vindictive, manipulative, a woman with an axe to grind. Let him try. You're confident. I'm right, ma'am, and I have evidence. At 0800 hours precisely, the door opened. Briggs entered. He was in Class A uniform, face clean-shaven, hair cut high and tight. He looked professional, composed, but his eyes gave him away. Red-rimmed, tired, a man who hadn't slept. Behind him came his lawyer, a Navy lieutenant commander, Jag, young, ambitious, the kind who took hard cases to make a name for himself. Decker entered next, then Hale, then Novak, then Maddox. The room filled. Everyone took their seats. Briggs on one side of the table, Wren on the other, Locke at the head. She waited until everyone was settled, then spoke. This hearing is called to order. The purpose is to review allegations of assault and harassment made by Lieutenant Commander Wren Calloway against Staff Sergeant Kane Briggs. This is an Article 32 hearing, preliminary investigation to determine if charges are warranted. All testimony will be recorded. Understood? Everyone nodded. Good. We'll begin with the complainant. Lieutenant Calloway, present your case. Wren stood, opened her file, and began. She walked through 14 days of documentation, each incident, each witness, each piece of evidence. Her voice was calm, clinical, no emotion, just facts, dates, times, locations. She presented the medical evidence, X-rays showing the fractures, doctor's notes confirming the injury was consistent with blunt force trauma. She presented witness statements, Novak, Hayes, two other instructors who'd seen Briggs's behavior. Then she presented the audio. Novak played the flagged segments, one by one. Briggs's voice filled the room. Clear, undeniable, threatening, incriminating. With each clip, his lawyer's face grew tighter. Wren watched him realize he was losing, that his client had talked himself into a conviction. When the audio finished, Wren presented the thermal footage, showed Briggs charging her in Building 4, showed him throwing punches, showed her defending, never striking first, only controlling, only responding. It was textbook self-defense. By the book, irreproachable. She finished, sat down. Locke looked at Briggs's lawyer. Counselor, your response? The lawyer stood, cleared his throat. Captain Locke, my client acknowledges that mistakes were made, but context matters. Lieutenant Calloway orchestrated last night's drill specifically to provoke my client. She used her authority to create a scenario where my client would be isolated and recorded without his knowledge. He was informed that comms would be recorded, Locke said. He signed the safety brief acknowledging it. Under duress, ma'am. He didn't know the recordings would be used against him in a criminal investigation. That's not duress, counselor. That's consequence. He made threats. He committed assault. The recording system simply documented it. But the entire scenario was designed to entrap him, to force him into making statements that, "No one forced him," Wren said. Her voice cut through the room. "I gave him multiple opportunities to stand down, to follow orders, to act like a professional. He chose violence. He chose insubordination. He chose to assault a superior officer. Those were his choices, not mine." The lawyer turned to her. "You manipulated him. I documented him. There's a difference. You used your rank to—" "I used my rank to authorize a legitimate training evolution. He used his fist to assault me. Which one of us is the problem, counselor?" Silence. The lawyer had no answer. Locke looked at him. "Anything else?" "Ma'am, I'd like to call Staff Sergeant Briggs to testify." "Proceed." Briggs stood, took the chair at the center of the table. The lawyer walked him through his version of events, claimed the knee strike was accidental, claimed the threats were jokes, claimed the confrontation in Building 4 was self-defense. But every answer was weak, contradicted by the evidence, contradicted by his own recorded words. Then Locke took over the questioning, and she was ruthless. "Sergeant Briggs, you stated the knee strike was accidental, but Lieutenant Calloway's medical report shows fractures consistent with a deliberate strike. How do you explain that?" "I was running fast, ma'am. The impact was harder than I intended." "But you did intend to make contact?" "No, I mean, it was an accident." "Then why did you whisper to Lieutenant Calloway immediately after impact? Quote, 'Let's see if the Navy's duct tape holds up this time.'" "That doesn't sound like an accident, Sergeant." Briggs's face went red. "I don't recall saying that. Specialist Novak recalls it. Private Hale recalls it. Are they both lying?" I might have said something, but it was a joke. A joke about injuring a superior officer's previously fractured ribs? That's your testimony?" Silence. Locke continued. "Let's move to last night's drill. You stated over comms, and I quote, 'When I find her, I'm putting her on her ass.' What did you mean by that?" "It was heat of the moment, ma'am. I was frustrated." "Frustrated enough to assault her?" "I didn't assault her, she attacked me." "The thermal footage shows you charging her, throwing punches. She only defended, never struck first. She provoked me." "By existing, Sergeant? By being a woman in a position of authority? What exactly did she do to provoke you?" Briggs had no answer. And in that silence, Wren saw it. The moment his case collapsed. The moment he realized there was no way out. No argument that would save him. He'd lost. And he knew it. Locke dismissed him, called Hale to testify. The private stood, walked to the chair, sat, and told the truth. Every word, everything he'd seen, everything he'd heard, the threats at the bar, the knee strike on the range, the smile on Briggs's face after. When he finished, Briggs's lawyer didn't even try to cross-examine. There was no point. The hearing lasted 4 hours. By noon, it was over. Locke dismissed everyone except the principals. Wren, Briggs, Maddox, and the lawyers. She stood, looked at each of them. "I've heard enough. Based on the evidence presented, I'm recommending the following. Staff Sergeant Kane Briggs, you are hereby charged under UCMJ Article 93, cruelty and maltreatment of subordinates, and Article 128, assault. You will face a court-martial. Pending trial, you are restricted to base. No contact with Lieutenant Calloway or any witnesses. Understood?" Briggs's face was ashen. "Yes, ma'am." Locke turned to Decker. "Corporal Flynn Decker, you are charged with failure to report misconduct and conspiracy. You'll be reduced in rank to E3 and reassigned pending administrative review." Decker nodded. Couldn't speak. Finally, Locke looked at Wren. "Lieutenant Calloway, your conduct throughout this incident has been exemplary. You documented harassment. You followed protocol. You defended yourself within the bounds of authorized force. No charges will be filed against you. However," she paused, "your methods were unorthodox. Some might say they skirted the line of acceptable conduct. I'm recommending you be reassigned. Wren's stomach dropped. Reassigned where, ma'am? Fort Bragg, North Carolina. JSOC wants you to consult on integration protocols for female operators in special operations. 6-month TDY. Ma'am, with respect, that's a desk job. I'm a shooter. I belong in the field. Locke's expression softened, just slightly. I know, Lieutenant, and after 6 months there may be an opportunity to return to operational duties. But right now, you need time to heal. Your ribs, your career, your reputation. Take the TDY, do good work, and trust the process. Wren wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but Maddox caught her eye, gave a slight shake of his head. Not now, not here. She came to attention. Yes, ma'am, understood. Dismissed. The room cleared. Wren stood in the hallway, ribs aching, exhausted, victorious, but somehow hollow. She'd won. Briggs was finished, but the cost was reassignment. 6 months away from the field, away from the work she loved. Was it worth it? Maddox appeared beside her. Walk with me, Lieutenant. They walked. Out of the building, across the compound, to the edge of the base where the desert stretched to the horizon. Endless, empty, beautiful in its harshness. Maddox stopped, looked out at it. You did good work, Lieutenant. Important work. You took down a predator who'd been hurting people for years. That matters. Then why does it feel like I lost? Because you're not used to winning at this kind of battle. You're used to firefights, clear enemies, defined objectives. This was different, messier, and the victory doesn't feel clean. It feels like punishment. It's not. Fort Bragg is an opportunity, a chance to influence policy, to change the system so the next woman doesn't have to go through what you did. I don't want to change policy. I want to be in the field. I know, but sometimes the field isn't where you're needed most. He looked at her. Sarah died in the field. She was a good pilot, great even. But you know what her real talent was? Teaching. She could take the worst pilot in the class and make them decent. Could take a decent pilot and make them great. And she hated it. Wanted to fly combat missions. Wanted to prove herself. What happened? She got her wish, and it killed her. He was quiet. I'm not saying don't deploy, don't fight, but I am saying there's more than one way to serve, more than one battlefield. And right now, the battlefield that needs you most is Fort Bragg, fixing the system, so other women don't have to fight the battles you fought. Wren looked out at the desert, thought about Briggs, about the women before her who'd filed complaints that went nowhere, about the women after her who wouldn't have to. Maybe Maddox was right. Maybe this was a different kind of mission. Just as important, just as necessary. 6 months, she said, then I want back in the field. 6 months, and I'll write you a recommendation that'll get you anywhere you want to go. DEVGRU? If that's what you want, she nodded. Deal. They shook hands, and Wren felt something shift. Not defeat, not victory, just acceptance. She'd fought this battle her way, won it her way, and now she'd fight the next one, whatever it was, wherever it took her. 3 months later, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Wren stood in a classroom full of female service members, 35 women from all branches, all here to learn integration protocols, to prepare for the day when all combat roles would be open to women without exception. She was dressed in fatigues, no rank insignia, just another instructor. But they all knew who she was. Word had spread. The SEAL who took down a staff sergeant with nothing but patience and evidence. Specialist Harper Novak stood at the back of the room. Now Petty Officer 3rd Class Novak, having transferred to Fort Bragg to continue working with Wren. She'd become more than an assistant. She'd become a student, learning not just how to operate comms, but how to fight wars the system understood. Wren stood at the front of the room, looked at the faces watching her, some young, some experienced, all determined. Pain is data, she began. What matters is what you do with it. Today I'm going to teach you how to turn pain into power, how to document harassment, how to build a case, how to fight battles the system understands. Because the field isn't the only place we fight, and the enemy isn't always wearing a different uniform. She taught for 2 hours, answered questions, shared her story, and when the class ended, a young Marine approached her. Corporal, early 20s, nervous. "Ma'am, I'm dealing with something. A staff sergeant. He's been inappropriate, and I don't know what to do." Wren pulled out a notebook, the same one she'd used to document Briggs. She handed it to the Marine. "Start here. Dates, times, witnesses, every incident, no matter how small. Build your case, and when you're ready, come find me. I'll help you finish it." The Marine took the notebook, eyes bright. "Thank you, ma'am." "Don't thank me, just win." 6 months after Fort Bragg, Dam Neck, Virginia. Naval Special Warfare Development Group, SEAL Team 6. Wren stood in front of the compound gates, civilian clothes, duffel bag over one shoulder. The guard checked her ID. "Lieutenant Commander Calloway, welcome to DEVGRU. They're expecting you." She walked through the gates, into the most elite special operations unit in the world. Her ribs had healed, the fractures mended, the pain was gone, but the scars remained. Reminders, not of weakness, but of survival. Her phone buzzed. Text from Maddox. "Heard you made DevGru. Your next mission starts now. Make it count." She smiled, typed back, "Always do, sir." And she walked forward, into the next battle, the next mission, the next challenge, because that's what warriors did. They didn't stop fighting. They just chose their battles carefully, fought them strategically, and won them completely. Pain fades. Conduct stays on record. And some lessons, once learned, are never forgotten. Years later, when new SEAL candidates asked Lieutenant Commander Wren Calloway what separated those who made it from those who didn't, she'd tell them about Helmand Province, about 11 hours with a collapsed lung, about 17 steps on 2 fractured ribs, about the night she turned silence into a weapon sharper than any blade. But what she never told them was the part that mattered most. That breaking wasn't the opposite of strength, that scars were proof you'd survived what should have killed you. That the most dangerous warriors weren't the ones who never fell. They were the ones who learned to stand back up and make every enemy who knocked them down regret it. She'd learned that lesson in the mud-brown walls of an Afghan compound, refined it in the white-hot sand of the Mojave, and proved it in the cold darkness of Range 47. 1 knee strike, 14 documented incidents, 17 flagged audio segments, and one man who learned too late that patience wasn't weakness. It was precision. It was planning. It was power held in reserve until the perfect moment to strike. Staff Sergeant Kane Briggs had mistaken her silence for surrender, her calm for cowardice, her professionalism for passivity. He thought broken ribs meant a broken spirit. He'd forgotten that the best snipers are the ones who can hold their breath the longest, who can wait in the cold, in the dark, in the pain, until the shot is perfect, until the target steps exactly where they need to be. And when they pull that trigger, they never miss. Wren Calloway never missed. The system had tried to fail her, tried to protect men like Briggs with technicalities and benefit of doubt and the eternal question of he said, she said. But she'd beaten the system at its own game, with documentation, with evidence, with the kind of meticulous preparation that turned a personal vendetta into an airtight legal case. She'd given Briggs every chance to walk away, every opportunity to stop, every warning that the path he was on would end badly. And when he ignored them all, when he charged into the darkness thinking he was the hunter, she'd shown him what it felt like to be prey. how to turn the system's own rules into weapons of accountability. And she thought about Sarah Maddox, the pilot who died in Kandahar saving Marines who probably never knew her name, the daughter who'd taught her father that courage came in many forms, the woman who'd proven that some battles were worth dying for. Ren had no intention of dying. She had every intention of living long enough to make sure that what happened to her never happened to another woman in uniform. That the next time a Kane Briggs tried to break someone, the system would be ready, would be watching, would remember that conduct stays on record. And records, unlike pain, never fade. She walked into the DevGru headquarters building, past the photos of fallen operators, past the mission plaques from operations that would never be declassified, past the legacy of warriors who'd written their names in blood and silence across every battlefield America had ever sent them to. And she added her own name to that legacy, not with a dramatic flourish, not with fanfare or recognition, but with the quiet certainty of someone who'd proven that the strongest weapons aren't always the loudest. Sometimes they're the ones you never see coming, the ones that strike from the shadows with perfect precision and absolute certainty, the ones that never miss. Pain fades, conduct stays on record, and some lessons, once learned, become legends.